DeShaun Foster is poised to still make a couple of splashes in class of 26 recruiting. But can they steal a couple of more bids? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. Welcome back, everydayers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Where we get started today, what we're talking about first, UCLA recruiting. Where can they still win? Is there a possibility elsewhere? And where have some of these other potential UCLA prospects and offers decided to go to after a decommit or two, while we discuss the NBA trade that involved not one, not two, but three former Bruins? All that and more. So, UCLA, their ranking, if you're looking at 24/7 Sports and the class of 26 recruiting, once as high as number 8, number 9, depending on what outlet you use, has, if you want to say, plummeted down to 19th. But in reality, I was on the show with Spencer McLaughlin, and I think after my stint with Locked On College Football there, UCLA being in the top 20 is a huge victory. From where they were to where they're coming now, I think the days for UCLA to be in the top 10 are still ahead of them with the way DeShaun Foster has improved the high school recruiting efforts in just a year. Revamping the coaching staff, revamping the recruiting staff, and finding ways to have UCLA in the conversation for many recruits. Now to start winning those battles in next year's class, in the class of 27, to get more 4-stars, dare I say go steal a 5-star out there and completely change their recruiting for next year, that's one thing. This year, what DeShaun's been able to do is hover them around top 20, dare I say top 15. But there is a chance UCLA, with a couple of commits and a couple of crystal balls, could push themselves even further into one of the best classes UCLA's had in years, with some of these guys remaining out there. UCLA, earlier today on July 7th, when I recorded this podcast, got a crystal ball for Massachusetts, a state of Massachusetts recruit who is being heavily pursued by Boston College. That's Carter Gooden. And you're like, why haven't I heard the name of Carter Gooden? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. This is a 4-star defensive lineman, a guy that could truly impact the final ranking, give UCLA that dynamic threat on the D-line, and bolster a class where UCLA has reaffirmed and continued to build in the trenches. You got to win on the O-line, and you got to win some battles defensively on the defensive line. You have to gain pressure. We've seen Coach Meade build up the secondary. Well, you know what's going to help if you get some D-line pressure. You can help against the run and not just have to rely on the DBs making plays. UCLA's finally addressed some of that potentially with some recruiting of Carter Gooden. 6'4", 260 out of Marion, Massachusetts. Number 1 recruit in the state of Massachusetts. 4-star kid. And this is one where I was looking at Locked On Boston College, that show, and they're talking about, hey, this is a recruitment battle that's heating up for a kid that's supposed to be their homegrown talents, and they might not even keep him on the East Coast. He might be another UCLA kid they find as a transplant from all the way on the opposite coast, and they bring him out west. This is what Andrew Ivins says about this kid, Carter Gooden. He's an early entry big man, needs some time to age, needs some maturity, newer to the game of football because he came up in Canada. So this is what the 24/7 Sports report is. So this is somebody who, coming to the U.S., came over from Canada, still maybe a lot more to project in the future, and maybe might be a project, wouldn't be exactly a plug-and-play necessarily in year one, but has an impressive get-off and has great sudden hands that can fight off blocks. That's what Andrew Ivins has put in his latest update about Carter Gooden. So the importance is that this is a guy that could still be a big impact guy, has a lot of upside, but would still need a bit of a project and a little bit of a build. Could maybe see him being the defensive version of a Johnny Jones, a guy that's got high upside, a lot of hype, but might need a year or two to develop. I remember talking to Brian Smith on the Locked On Portal podcast, also Locked On Seminoles, about how UCLA's get some of these guys from across the coast, but might need a year or two to develop, which they all do at some point, going from high school, transitioning into college. But those are guys that would be highly rated, highly ranked, that might need a year or two to develop. But you hope that if UCLA, with this crystal ball, wins another recruiting battle, that would be huge. That would be an absolute big-time get for the Bruins as they're shoring up the final 26 recruiting before you eventually get to them signing of some sort. I know it's going to look a little weirder now that there's no national letters of intent, and what's early signing day? What's that going to look like now in the revenue sharing era? Now that you see what the reports that Texas Tech is showing out millions of dollars in official guaranteed money for an offensive lineman, a guaranteed 3-year contract, it's nuts. So we'll find out what UCLA will be doing from here on forth, but being recruited by Jethro Franklin, new D-line coach with Akaka Malloy helping in on the assist and the recruitment, UCLA is poised to get a big-time game changer from the opposite coast on the D-line. You look at some other guys. We will get to the teammate of Gooden in just a moment, but another update, who could be another impact guy, another 4-star opportunity for UCLA? A running back, a 6-foot running back from Valencia, all right? So if you go out to Santa Clarita, go out to the Santa Clarita Valley, there's a top-tier running back in the state of California still out there, but he's crystal balled to Notre Dame. UCLA is in on it with Washington, Nebraska, but the prediction for 24/7 Sports has Bonner going to Notre Dame. So unless UCLA, who last saw Bonner come around May 16th, Bonner's gone to Nebraska, he's gone to Penn State, Notre Dame, and just recently finished some official visits in the summer with Colorado. Can they jump over some Big Ten schools, some, independent ACC schools, if you want to throw Notre Dame in there with all their scheduling craziness? You got Colorado and Coach Prime trying to throw in their last pitches to a Brian Bonner, who is another multi-sport athlete, a big-time running back with some track and field ability. UCLA could add to the running back class, although DeShaun Foster's done quite a bit with what he has with running backs in the running back room right now, and still who has yet to be used in last year's recruiting class, this year's recruiting class. I wonder what that's going to mean if they're going to go after somebody of this talent and win with somebody who is already on track to go to Notre Dame. If they can flip that potential thought process right now, no official commitment yet from what I've seen, then maybe, just maybe, UCLA could find themselves with a top-tier D lineman and a top-tier running back. Other updates over the weekend, if you're out celebrating the 4th of July with the extra day off, whatever you're doing, you might have missed the Pula Twins did commit to the University of Utah. So after being one of the earliest, longest running commits in the 26 class for UCLA, Jaron Pula, Kendon Pula, who are some very talented players, you see the switch in the receiver coaching. You see the switch maybe in the recruiting pitch. All the receivers UCLA got from California, from the state of Florida, you're like, okay, that probably wasn't going to be a match made in both guys going to UCLA. They eventually commit to Utah. So that's the update on the Pula Twins. They stay in state. They stay home. And we'll see if that changes. UCLA obviously plays Utah the next, I think, couple of years coming up with the series with UCLA versus Cal and UCLA versus Utah. We'll see if that changes anything. But for now, the Pula Twins are going to Utah. Devin Fitzgerald. That name sounds familiar. One, because, yes, he is the son of the former NFL player, and because he decided to go to Notre Dame. UCLA was in his Final Four, Final Five, chose to go to Notre Dame. And in my mind, if there was a receiver in the class of 26 and they had UCLA in their Final Five, Final Four at this stage, I think UCLA is probably honored. But I'm pretty confident in saying that barring a string of decommitments from the receivers that they already have coming in this class, I don't see any more skill talent coming in the receiver room. I don't see any more commits. For better or for worse, UCLA is mostly full unless there's an absolute game changer that the Bruins can find at the high school level. At this point, with Burl Tolaire III having been at UCLA for a couple months now, I think the Bruins are set in the receiver room. It was just a matter of time. So somebody who was in the Final Four, Final Five with UCLA is a potential choice. It wasn't as much of a loss. You wish the kid the best. But if you see a receiver looking at UCLA, unlikely for that to happen. Now let's pivot back to Carter Gooden and a potential teammate, all right? You have Marcus Almada, who is his high school teammate, another top recruit in the state of Massachusetts, a 3-star, 6'4", 280 from the same high school, Tabor Academy, if I'm even saying that right, from Marion, Massachusetts, who has been predicted to go to UCLA and has been crystal balled from 24/7 Sports and other outlets to go to UCLA for a little bit of time now. So the thought was maybe this could be another high school teammate across the coast going to UCLA like Micah Smith and his teammate from Vero Beach, right? Micah Smith was one of the big time recruits, like, let's go. You saw 4 commits from the state of Florida, got one of his high school teammates. Maybe UCLA can find what's in that smaller pool of talent in the state of Massachusetts and get 2 D linemen. All right, they're playing on the same D line in the same class. Speak about chemistry and growth and bringing that family-like atmosphere. So it's not like you bring one kid who might be changing in a completely different culture, right? It's one thing to grow up in Massachusetts and then play college ball in Southern California, but to do that potentially with someone you've played high school ball with from your same high school and your same class, that's got to be very smart recruiting. As much as you see the lucrative opportunities beyond the NIL or the revenue sharing, you still got to be able to be at home when you're going to school. And in college football, if you're going to stay at a program for multiple years, 3-ish years before you're NFL eligible, or if you can graduate with a degree that quickly in the quarter system at UCLA, you probably want somebody to help make it feel like it's at home. UCLA got that with a couple of Vero Beach kids and maybe with a couple of Marion, Massachusetts kids in Almada that could help build the D-line like what UCLA's already been trying to do with the O-line with a pair of Florida commits, state of Florida commits, doing that with Massachusetts. The Bruins have a couple of crystal balls that could push themselves into the top 15, the latest of which was Carter Gooden, but now you bring in Marcus Almada, who could help with UCLA. This is what Hudson Standish, a national analyst for 24/7 Sports, said just a few weeks ago. Just a shade under 6'4", versatile defensive tackle with redirection skills and short area quickness. So that's somebody that UCLA could get in, according to 24/7 Sports, right up on him. Can they get to the top 15? A couple of crystal balls, and they might be able to do so. And still, there's a couple more guys UCLA might go after as well. And we'll talk about that in upcoming Locked On UCLA episodes. But next, we will dive into what is that wacky NBA trade that featured a few Bruins all in one trade? We'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day, and suddenly you realize, I want to be in the stands, I got nothing going on. And that's where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. You can save money on tickets to splurge on the food, the drinks, the merch, or even invite a bigger group with you. Game Time makes it possible. And they make it buying tickets super easy. Just me the other day, I was like, I want to go to a ball game with my brother. And I've been looking at prices. It can be a little pricey, and then I see Game Time. It's getting close to the game time, literally and figuratively. And all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute. First pitch is coming up. Prices have dipped. And I grab those tickets, and we go, and we have a good time. With Game Time, the cheapest tickets were out there, and seats during a day game in the shade. And you can use the all-around seat view to be like, wait a minute. I can get seats there and know that I'm in the shade during a day game. Huge, because with Game Time, it's the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB. And hey, if you want to go see a Dodger game, go check out Game Time. Get some tickets and see if you're in the shade during a day game. Or get those lowest priced tickets for what's been a little pricey season. Go with Game Time and get in the ball game for a last-minute opportunity. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Lowest last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Cruising on here on Locked On UCLA, we're talking about a crazy trade that happened and was announced on July 7th, the early morning hours, if you're on the Pacific Standard Time, PST. Or if you're like, wait a minute, what's been going on in the NBA? Isn't it just early summer league season? Like, what's actually going on right now? UCLA players were involved in a 3-team trade, and where 3 of the 4 players traded were UCLA players. Now, is it going to drastically alter the careers for some? Yes, maybe for some in the twilight of their careers, maybe not. But it's a funny tidbit, and I thought I might as well bring it up here in Locked On UCLA. So you have the likes of the Clippers. All right, so you get your LA connection. You get your Utah Jazz, and then you got your Miami Heat. And we already know Jaime Jaquez Jr. is a member of the Heat. He was a big-time selection when the Heat went on a run, was a good part of that when he was a rookie. We'll see how that career continues. He was not a part of this trade. So UCLA players included Norman Powell, who is going from the Clippers to Miami. Norman Powell having a great year after getting an opportunity to start for so many times after Paul George left the LA Clippers. You saw Powell find his way in the starting lineup and was absolutely electric. About 22 points per game. I remember checking out the Intuit Dome, also with Game Time. Boom, boom. He had almost 22 points per game. All-star candidate that was like a 60-game starter and thrived. got to shout out Norman Powell. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, he was sitting in like the front row when the Bruins were playing Gonzaga at the Intuit Dome, the home of the Clippers, the new arena in Inglewood. And when UCLA beat the Zags, I'm pretty sure that Norman Powell was in the front row cheering on his beloved Bruins in his own backyard. So Powell, after a career year, is going to Miami. Then you've got Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson, who are finding their way to Utah. All right, remember Kyle Anderson, the Steve Alford years, found his way to UCLA, and then after a very shorter career, ends up going to the NBA. He's found himself in quite a few teams, and now he's going to Utah. With Kevin Love, I wonder if Kevin Love will stick with Utah or if he's bought out and finds his way to another NBA team. But he's had a very outstanding NBA career, winning an NBA title, finding his way in various NBA rosters. I wonder what Kevin Love has next in his career. The one that's not the UCLA Bruin is John Collins, who is a younger player and will be going to the LA Clippers. But how often do you see, all right, NBA trade? You've seen a lot of craziness. You're going to be like, wait a minute. You have this guy, you got a 7-team trade. You got all sorts of craziness with what's happening in the KD trade for him to get to Houston. And then next thing you know, you have the NBA that was like, wait a minute. In an official 3-team trade, you had Norman Powell, you had Kyle Anderson, and Kevin Love. 3 Bruins, various different generations of UCLA basketball and modern UCLA history, very much, all right? Very different between the glory days, the championship year in 95, the Ben Howland era, and then you have the Steve Alford era, and now we're obviously in the Mick Cronin era. So for what UCLA gets, they get opportunity to be like, hey, look at all these NBA players. I remember I was hosting a trivia night the other night, and they were talking about which universities currently have a bunch of players in the NBA. There's only so many that have as many as UCLA do in the NBA currently. So the Bruins still have maintained this college to NBA consistently with longevity, right? It's one thing to have a superstar. It's one thing to find the Cooper Flags of the world. But UCLA has been able to somewhat maintain this. You get to college, you go to UCLA, and you get to the pros. Now, I wonder what Mick Cronin's going to be able to do. Or in the transfer portal era, how does that look like, right? Because some of these kids are playing with 2, 3, 4, 5 different schools in various aspects. Can you claim that kid going to the pros? Did you develop him? Did you get him over the hump? I don't know. But UCLA largely, until recent years, wasn't as much an aggressive suitor in the portal. And they had guys who were there for 1 to 2 or 3 years, all right? K. Love, 1 year at UCLA, got him to a Final Four, got to the NBA, he's had a great career. Got Norman Powell, who's made a nice NBA career. Kyle Anderson, bounced around. So I wonder if UCLA under Mick Cronin is going to be able to continue that model in a new age of college basketball, where it's the UCLA branding that can bring guys in, but also say, hey, we have Los Angeles in our backyard. We have the guys who play in the NBA. They play in our gym for just the summer runs. And our UCLA guys will play with those NBA guys and try their best to get better and just basically, simple summer ball runs. And then they find themselves developing in SoCal. Maybe they get more eyes now. There's multiple arenas in Los Angeles as to who might be the best talented players. But it's a funny tidbit where obviously the biggest story of the weekend would be a KD. You have so many entertaining NBA options. The Lakers will obviously dominate with Luka as the headlines. Well, LeBron, all these things. But for now, UCLA is a part of a 3-team trade where 3 of the 4 players traded with a pick are going to various teams. It's not often you generally see a multi-team, multi-player trade that has so much coming from one school, all right? That'd be funny if they could pose for a picture. If for some reason they're all in the same spot, obviously it's a little tougher with 3 NBA teams, obviously, unless one of them is bought out and goes to another team or different things. Now that you have Norman Powell going to Miami, K. Love, and Kyle Anderson going to Utah, if they're still on those respective rosters at the same time when they play later in the year and they're active, they should take a picture, be like UCLA, the UCLA trade. Maybe it makes an impact in the NBA. Maybe it doesn't. But just a funny tidbit to bring up here to wrap up Locked On UCLA. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. We'll talk more basketball, more football, more updates. Will UCLA do anything to update the baseball stadium situation? We're still waiting on official word on that publicly. We'll talk about all the fun things coming up on Locked On UCLA as we wait for the countdown to the beginning of the 25-26 academic calendar year. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.